Okay, so thanks so much for watching this video. I'm so excited to talk to you today about the Bible and continuing in this Bible series on Bible forgeries. So you're going to hear out there as you're witnessing that some people think that there were a lot of forgeries to the Bible, and so that got intermixed with things that were true and other things were not true, or maybe the whole thing isn't true. And so we're going to talk about Bible forgeries today. I'm so excited. Let's go ahead and dig in. Hey y'all, it's me, Cindy Fessler, your fellow Christian warrior, here to help you know more so you can share more and grow more of God's kingdom. So if you haven't done so already, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. And this is an article from Answers in Genesis written by Tim Chaffee in 2014. So in response to Bart Ehrman's book. So Bart Ehrman is an intelligent scholar with a knack for explaining complex textual issues at the popular level. He's written multiple best-selling books on textual criticism and what we can really know about the biblical text and its transmission, however. Ehrman frequently overstates his case and misleads his readers. He makes grandiose claims, leading readers to believe he is introducing truths that church leaders have fought to silence. Yet his assertions are often standard material for first-year seminary students, and in many cases are included in the notes of study Bibles. In his book, Forged, Ehrman unveils a tantalizing secret. Many of the New Testament books were not penned by the individuals generally assigned to them. So, for example, Peter didn't write, John didn't write the book of John, and so forth. So, this review will provide a cursory review of Forge, critique Ehrman's methodology, and expose his many exaggerated conclusions. So, introduction. Virtually half the New Testament was written by imposters, taking on the names of apostles like Paul. This statement was made in an article on the CNN website discussing a book written by Bart Ehrman entitled Forged, Writing in the Name of God, Why the Bible's Authors Are Not Who We Think They Are. The book's dust jacket announces that the author will reveal which New Testament books were outright forgeries and expose the deception in the history of the Christian religion. Early in the work, he writes, "Eventually I came to realize that the Bible not only contains untruths or accidental mistakes, it also contains what almost anyone today would call lies. That is what this book is about." How sad. Bart Ehrman, the author of this book, is the James A. Gray Distinguished Professor of Religious Studies at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He is an intelligent communicator in both speech and in writing. Evidence of this can be seen in his appearances on CNN and the History Channel, as well as in the fact that he has written several best-selling books on a subject that bores most people, the textual criticism of the New Testament. And actually, I do have a couple videos on textual criticism so you can understand what exactly that is, because it's important to know. Those who seek to attack the Bible often cite Ehrman's work. Not only is he an excellent writer and storyteller, but he was raised as a Christian in a Christian home, and he earned a diploma from Moody Bible Institute and a bachelor's degree from Wheaton College before earning a master's in divinity and a PhD from Princeton Theological Seminary. So this guy is a pretty heavy hitter, right? Ehrman's journey from evangelism to outright agnosticism is well documented in his book and is often touted by critics who view Christians as ignorant. There are some strengths to Ehrman's latest book. His discussion of the numerous forgeries in the 2nd through 4th centuries AD, so a couple thousand years after the death of Christ, and how the practice of forgery was considered unacceptable by early Christians, provides a strong case against many liberal theologians who claim forgery was perfectly acceptable in the early church. So he's at least saying that forgery was not acceptable. And then he goes on to say that the books of the Bible, some of them were forged. Also, his writings often raise challenges that force us to study God's word in more detail. And that's always good. That's what we're doing here, right? We're learning more about God's word so that we can defend our faith. Liberal theologians have long argued against the conservative view of the Bible authorship, but Ehrman has become one of the most vocal and lucid promoters of the liberal views, although space does not allow for a full refutation. So in this video and in this article that I'm reading from, we're not going to go through every point because it's an entire book. So we won't go through all of the claims. The article will address a few of his major complaints against the traditionally accepted authorship of biblical books, and it will demonstrate that believers can have confidence that the books were not forgery. So we can have confidence that they're not. So challenge 1, most New Testament writers were illiterate. So here's something you're going to hear this from skeptics. This first objection to be discussed is his contention that Bart Ehrman, the author's contention that most of the men traditionally believed to have written the New Testament were illiterate. He wrote most of the apostles were illiterate and could not, in fact, write. They could not have left an authoritative writing if their souls depended on it. Expanding this point in the second chapter, he argued that Peter could not have written the 2 letters ascribed to him since he was just a fisherman from a backwoods Jewish village made up of hand-to-mouth laborers who did not have an education. He even quotes Acts 4:13 as proof that Peter was illiterate, because Peter and John are described as uneducated, which Ehrman claims means they were illiterate. Okay, so there's the challenge. How can one possibly overcome these arguments against Peter's authorship of the 2 books that bear his name? Actually, it's quite simple. Let's take Ehrman's claims in reverse order. So first, let's look at Acts 4:13 states, "Now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John and perceived that they were uneducated and untrained men, they marveled, and they realized that they had been with Jesus." Okay, so that's from the Bible, right? Notice that the point of this passage is that the members of the Sanhedrin were amazed that Peter and John could have addressed them with such boldness. Obviously, Peter and John were able to speak in a manner that impressed this group of highly educated men. This point alone refutes Ehrman's claims. Also, the word translated as uneducated men can mean illiterate, as Ehrman states in his book, but primarily refers to someone who is unlettered, meaning that they lacked formal education. The Greek word here is agrammatoi. One Greek lexicon entry in the word states it pertains to one who has not acquired a formal education, referring primarily to formal training. Some persons have assumed that agrammatoi in Acts 4:13, uneducated, means illiterate in the sense of not being able to read or write, but this is highly unlikely in view of the almost universal literacy in New Testament times. So almost everybody could read and write, and especially as a result of extensive synagogue schools. Evidently, agrammatoi in Acts 4:13 refers to a lack of formal or rabbinic training. So the Sadducees were like, "Oh, well, you didn't go through formal rabbinic training. How can you talk like this?" Doesn't mean they were illiterate. So in Acts 4:13, the term more than likely conveys an idea that Peter and John were not educated in the same fashion as the members of the Sanhedrin. Also, unless the members of the Sanhedrin had asked Peter and John to read or write something during their hearing, how would these leaders know if the disciples were illiterate or not? So second, it is true that Peter and John were fishermen and not scholars, right? However, fishermen would need to be able to read and write with some degree of proficiency in order to conduct business. Finally, even if Peter and John were illiterate, there is nothing that could have prevented them from using scribes to record their words. In the 1st century AD, scribes were commonly commissioned by rich, poor, and middle-class citizens. If Peter and John used scribes, that would mean that they were not the authors of the books attributed to them. I suppose in very technical sense, they would not have written these letters, but this is hardly newsworthy. I mean, we know that Paul, who was definitely literate, sometimes used scribes to pen his letters, like a CEO might dictate a letter to a secretary who writes or types the words. No one would deny that the CEO is the author of the letter. In a similar fashion, the apostles could have used scribes to write their words. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. I am so excited that you stuck to it to the end, and I appreciate that. And please do smack that subscribe button. Check out the next video.